Hi, Judge Andrew Napolitano here, and you are on Freedom Watch with my guest and good friend and someone who truly honors our Constitution, Senator Rand Paul from the state of Kentucky. Senator, as you know, you and I were together yesterday. You invited me to testify before your Federal Spending Oversight Subcommittee regarding the separation of powers and who should declare war. Why did you convene yesterday's public hearing?
You know, I think it was an extraordinary hearing because we actually discussed whether or not being at war in half a dozen countries is constitutional if it's not been approved by Congress. You know, our Constitution was pretty clear. Our founding fathers said Congress shall declare war. And I thought what was interesting from the hearing yesterday is both yourself and the other experts on the Constitution were saying that there's no historical evidence that the founding fathers wanted the president to be able to make these decisions on their own. But, you know, we've been in Afghanistan for 17 years now. Our original mission is long passed over, but we're also in Yemen, Somalia, the sub-Saharan countries. We're all over the place, and no one's ever voted on any of these wars in Congress. So I think it's a very important debate that we were having.
One of the arguments that I made, which resonated well with the committee members who were there, is that Congress often looks the other way, and this is almost an amendment of the Constitution by consent. And it's really contrary to what the framers thought. The framers thought, I think, and there's evidence is abundant for this, that each branch of government, Congress, President, the courts, would jealously and zealously guard their prerogatives. But we know Congress doesn't do that. My question, why doesn't Congress do that? Why does Congress look the other way when presidents start wars in countries that most of us have never even heard of?
This is the real perplexing thing. Madison thought we'd have a self-correcting mechanism, that we'd pit ambition against ambition, that Congress would be ambitious to hang on to power so they wouldn't give it up to the president. But it turns out that Congress is not so ambitious. I laughingly said yesterday that they're ambitious in a way. They sort of want power, but they don't really want their constitutional power. They want power over some sort of process. But as far as declaring war, they're happy to sort of say, oh, no, Mr. President, you decide, because maybe they don't want that ultimate responsibility. But I think it's such an important discussion. The reason the framers of the Constitution wanted that power to be dispersed among many people is they were trying to prevent us from going to war too often. They had seen the kings and queens of Europe, brothers and sisters and cousins, continuously at war, and they wanted to avoid that. They wanted to make it where we would only go to war when we were attacked. But really, this is a big problem. And so now we have a new group of people up here saying, well, Congress needs to act. So Senators Corker and Kaine have introduced a new authorization to use force, but unfortunately their authorization says to the president, hey, you decide who we're at war with, and then we'll send us a note and let us know who you decided. But in order to overturn the president's decision, it would take a 2/3 vote by Congress. So we think this turns the Constitution on its head and is really a step backwards, not a step forwards.
And the reason it would take a 2/3 vote is because if Congress enacted legislation ordering the president, say, to stop sending troops to Somalia, or if Congress enacted legislation saying you cannot spend money on troops in Somalia, I'm just using Somalia as an example, the president would probably veto that legislation, and in order to override the veto, you need 2/3 of both houses. But think of it, even if it were a simple majority vote, if that's all that was needed, what are the odds of Congress restraining the president's hand after he already has troops in the field and they need food and material and bullets and ammunition, even by a simple majority vote? It's just not going to happen.
I think the way to put this in perspective and how unusual and how wrong-headed this notion is of letting the president decide to go to war and then Congress can disapprove is if we looked at spending power. Right now, Congress votes to spend the money and the president spends the money. What if we said to the president, hey, you spend whatever you want, and we'll vote to disapprove your spending, and then he says, well, I veto it, then it would take a 2/3 vote every time to stop him from spending money. Nobody in their right mind would say that's a good idea. So if it's not a good idea for spending, which the founding fathers said spending should be in the Congress, war power should also remain in the Congress, and we shouldn't give that power up to the president.
The hearing that we held yesterday, which had about 5 Democrats and 2 Republicans, and 3 witnesses. We were all more or less on the same side. The three witnesses and the senators who were there were pretty much arguing that this is wrong and this legislation is wrong. The prerogative belongs with the Congress. That's decided in the Constitution, and we took an oath to uphold the Constitution. Did you make any headway yesterday in persuading other members of the Senate, maybe perhaps 41, so that this piece of legislation, as well intended as it may be, does not pass?
I think that there is a chance we can stop this piece of legislation, but you have to understand that the majority of Congress, Republican and Democrats, are either neoconservatives or neoliberals. They believe in unlimited authority for the president. They say it's the commander-in-chief or the Article 2 of the Constitution authority. They think that that is unlimited. And so many of them don't want any limitations at all, and they're just as happy to have the president make every decision on war. I will say that the hearing was worthwhile because it brought up a very important constitutional point about war, and because there are some people on the margins. If 41 of us would say no, then this motion would fail. I think this motion by Kaine and Corker actually turns the Constitution upside down and does something that is unconstitutional. It gives an enumerated power, a power that the Constitution gave to Congress. It gives it to the presidency, and that is flat out wrong, and it's unconstitutional.
Senator Rand Paul, thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
From New York, defending freedom whenever they let me, Judge Andrew Napolitano. See you next time, America.